Welcome to the Music Theory Challenge. This is lesson 1. I want to thank you for being here and for investing in yourself and in your own musical journey. This material is not going to be delivered the way you would expect it to be delivered in your typical music class. We're going to do it a bit more logically. It's going to be in bite-sized pieces, and we're going to move slowly. Over time, we will see how all of this adds up to music literacy. And that is our goal. We're not trying to play an instrument, we're trying to achieve music literacy. In our first lesson, what I want to give you guys is the framework in which all of the material that follows will be organized. I also want to give you the framework in which I want you to think about all of the rest of material that we will be covering. So our title today is that we are visualizing music. What I want you to think about is that music is a language. We have to be able to understand it, speak it, hear it intelligibly, read it, write it. And if we're reading and writing it, we have to be able to engage with it with our eyes and not just our ears. When we talk about visualizing music, I want you to think of a graph. Now, don't get too concerned. You might not be as comfortable with mathematics as I am. Don't worry. I'll make this easy and simple for you. Do not be concerned. Getting back to what I was saying, we can visualize music as a graph. And on one side of the graph, we are measuring what we play. And on this side, we are measuring when we play it. Now, for any given instrument, we would have to be able to look at what this instrument is going to play in this particular instance for this particular song or piece or whatever word you want to use. All right? And when we visualize music, I want you to think of it as a graph of what we play against when we play it. And what that means is that this plane will dictate the notes for us, what we're playing, the notes that we hear, whether a note is high or the note is low. All right? That's what this axis is for. The higher we go, the higher the note is. The lower we go, the lower the note is. And this axis is going to tell us when we play. And we're going to read our music in this direction, from left to right. The same way we read visualizing music, what, when. The same way we read music is the same way that we read English, from left to right. So whatever is to the left is going to be played before whatever is to its right. To give an example, I'm going to represent some notes on the board and we'll discuss them. Now I've plotted out some points on our graph, and these points are going to represent notes that we are going to play in a piece on a particular instrument. What we have here is we have a note here and we have a note here. Let's stay with that. These notes are lining up on the when axis with the when axis at the exact same point, so they're going to be played at the same time. However, they don't line up on the same place on our what axis. Particularly, this note is going to be higher than this note. So let's imagine that this is La, this is La, all right? So this is going to be higher than this. But they're both going to be played simultaneously at the same time. But check this out. If we look at these notes over here, we can see that this note lines up with this note on the what axis. So this La note, this is going to be the same pitch. And this La note, this is going to be the same pitch. These notes don't line up with these notes on our when axis, okay? So we're going to play these two notes simultaneously first, and then we're going to play these two notes simultaneously. Another thing that you should recognize is that this la is longer than this la, all right? And since this one is longer, we're going to play it for longer, and we're going to keep playing this even when this has stopped. So what we have at the end is that we have two notes being played simultaneously here, two different notes. This one higher than this one, and then we release, we don't play anything, and then we come and we play these two notes together. This note higher than this note. But when we release this note, we're going to hold this one for a little longer. So as I said, this is our what axis. Lets us know what we're playing, whether the pitch is high or it is low. And this is our when axis. Lets us know when we're playing. Visualizing music is about plotting what we're playing against when we're playing it. So now that we've gone through the rules, let's go through the different types of visualizations that we have for music. The first of them we're going to call the piano roll. Now the reason we call it a piano roll is because the piano roll was a roll that we used to put into a piano. More like a scroll with musical information in it that would allow a particular type of piano to play itself when the scroll rolls through the mechanics of the piano. Now, if you were to roll out the scroll, it would look more or less like this. You have your notches for where there are notes. They would be longer in some places, shorter in some places, and this would represent the notes that would be played should you feed that scroll into the piano. And the scroll would be fed through like this. And so that is also the direction in which we would read a piano roll, if we could read a piano roll. Now we no longer have piano rolls really, but we do have automatically playing instruments, digital instruments, for those of us who are involved in electronic music production, which you may be and which I do myself. All right? So when we're dealing with electronic music production, the type of software that we use is called a digital audio workstation. All right? And I will show you one of those today in this lesson. In the digital audio workstation, we have musical input that we're now looking at in a digital interface. And that is actually an acronym, Musical Input Digital Interface, MIDI. And if we were to look at the MIDI information that tells our digital instruments what to play automatically by themselves, it would look like a piano roll, which, as I said, would look something like this. And the higher the notes would be, the higher these notches, the higher the notes they represent. The lower these notches, the lower the notes they represent. And the program itself would be reading the music from this end to that end. All right? Follows the same rules. Now there is another way in which we can visualize music, and that is called a score. Now a score operates a little differently to a piano roll. Here you see we have a staff, we have 5 lines going like this, space in between them. First we start off with something that may or may not look like this, and that is called a clef. Then we have something that may or may not look like this, and that is called a key signature. Now what the clef and the key signature do for us is that they give us the context for what we are playing. Because these lines and the spaces in between them represent notes. And the higher we go from this line to this space, to this line to this space, the higher the notes that are represented in terms of the notes that we hear. The next thing that we have is called a time signature, and that's these numbers right here. And what the time signature does for us is that it gives us the context for the when. It sets this line, it rules this line out for us like the markings on a ruler. And while these things give us context for this, and this gives us context for this, when we get from after the time signature, then we start reading our music. And we will see notes and rests. Whereas in the piano roll, where you see a notch, you play. And where you don't see notches, you don't play. In a score like this, notes tell you when to play and what to play. And these are the notes you write as opposed to the notes you hear. But the notes you write represent the notes you hear and also how long you play that note. The rests, on the other hand, of which this is an example, they tell you when not to play. So we don't have gaps, we have rests. And so how do we understand this bar of music? First, we're going to not play, and then we're going to play this, 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 and then we're going to play this. And these two notes that are on this second line, counting the lines from the bottom, are going to be higher than these three notes in this first space, which are going to be higher than this note on that first line. The what against the when. We're still following the rules, aren't we? I hope that has been simple enough for you, and this will give you the framework of thinking about the rest of the material. First, what we're going to do in our lessons that come after this is that we're going to focus on the when. How do we rule this? How do we understand the when? And we're just going to be focusing on this for a number of lessons. And then for a number of lessons, we're going to be focusing on the what. And while this is going to help us understand timing in music, this will help us understand and piece together melodies and harmonies and chords and keys and all of those things. And then we'll add some intangibles at the end of it, right? Just to make sure that if you see anything else, you'll be able to deal with that as well. So I hope this was an enjoyable class for you. This is lesson 1 of the Music Theory Challenge. Come back again. We are going slowly but surely to musical literacy. Praise Jesus.